really view these preschool years as sort of like your homeschool mom training wheel period. So you don't have to have it all figured out now, and sort of be okay with maybe this feels not so natural to me quite yet. If you came out of a traditional school background, well, then it's hard to think outside that box, right? It's hard to think about, oh, wait, learning doesn't have to be from a textbook, right? Learning can happen through life. But while that may be easier for someone like me who came from homeschooling, I'm like, throw out the box, don't put me in a box. That's really hard for a new homeschool mom.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am back with Amy Sloan from Humility and Doxology, and we're talking about the preschool years and those early kindergarten, pre-K years, because they're so much fun and they're so cute. Oh man, these are just such sweet, cute years, and they're going to go by before you know it. So enjoy these years with your little ones. For those of you who have itty bitty ones, they're just such a blessing. And so we are here to help you enjoy those years with them. Before we get back into our conversation, though, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. They actually have preschool curriculum as well. So not that you need a whole set of preschool curriculum, but they have all sorts of resources. They've got books, they've got they've got a ton of stuff. So go on their website and check it out. Just put in preschool and lots of stuff will pop up for you. bjupresshomeschool.com. Amy, welcome back to the podcast. This is such a fun conversation. We were talking on Monday about kind of what the primary goals were for these preschool years. And we talked, of course, about the number one goal being discipleship, and then looking forward to where we want our kids to be in those adult years, and then moving backwards. And even in these little itty bitty years, reaching for that goal. And so we talked about, just strengthening their faith and reading Bible stories with them and memorizing scripture with them, whether it's through saying it, which, by the way, I said that we do a lot of scripture memory with our girls. Our girls learned scripture by just saying it. We had a couple of songs. And actually I have a really good resource for learning scripture by song. And I'll put that link in the show notes for you guys. But we didn't learn most of it by song. We learned most of it by just saying it. We just recited it over and over. Maybe like every night we would pick one psalm. It's usually a psalm, sometimes a proverb. And we would just repeat it over and over and over again, maybe 2 or 3 times a night until our girls started picking it up. And so it doesn't have to be by song. If you're not a singer or, you don't have good songs, it's fine. Just say it. You don't have to sing it. I can't sing. Everyone knows I cannot sing, so I rarely sing to my kids. Anyway, so that was a fun conversation, just talking through the discipleship part of it. And then we ended talking about the academics and kind of what is important academically in these early years. So if you missed that episode, go back and listen to that. We kind of left off with teaching them how to communicate with one another and with other people, I should say, not so much with one another, but teaching them communication skills and teaching them to recognize letters and things like that. What are some of the other academic avenues we can take with these little ones?
I think the other really important thing to develop in our little children is a good number sense. So if you think about it as number sense or thinking about numbers as a language, if the idea of math scares you, think about it that way. But it's super important to lay a good, solid math foundation in these little years. But again, this doesn't mean you're going to have to, sit there with a math workbook and your 3-year-old necessarily.
Yeah.
Some of us have those 3-year-olds who love that kind of thing. So follow what is good for your child. Yes. Yeah. But a lot of it can come very naturally, again, as you're going up and down the stairs and you're carrying your toddler, or you have the baby and, got the bouncing child beside you jumping from stair to stair. Of course, you can start by counting the stairs, 1, 2, 3, but maybe shake it up a little bit. This time, count by 2s. We're going to count by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8. And so you're just teaching them very simply as you are going about your day. Look for all the ways you can bring numbers. Mm-hmm. They're all around us. They're part of our life all the time. We just have to recognize it and then say it and communicate it to our child. So a little one is helping you set the table for dinner. Okay, mommy and daddy use the big forks, and you and, your brother use the little forks. How many big forks and how many little forks do we need? Mm-hmm. How many forks is that all together, right? These are sort of conversations we can be having with our child, not in a way to quiz them or, oh, I gotcha,
Right.
It's fine to then tell them the answer if they don't know. But these are the kinds of ways where you're literally teaching them to think about numbers and math, addition, subtraction, all of these things in the course of their normal life. Inequalities. Okay, that's a big word, but really it just means something's bigger than something else. And I personally have never met a 3 or 4-year-old who could not tell if their friend got more goldfish than they did, right? So, you're talking about greater than, less than, talking about ordinal numbers. So first, second, third, you're waiting in line at the post office. Oh, it looks like we are third from the end, or we're second, we're going to be second. There's someone else in front of us. You're playing with cars and trains on the train track, first, second, third. That comes very naturally and easily, things that are bigger and smaller than others. So I'm just throwing out a lot of ideas here, but hopefully that's starting to get your imagination going like, oh, really, math is part of your life with your little ones already. So you just have to look for ways to use those math terms maybe, but in a natural way. And I think that actually really helps as they move into elementary math because they're already used to basically word problems. That's basically what you're teaching them to do is translate the English sentence into a math sentence or vice versa. And that will really help them as they grow and learn. Yeah.
It is being intentional in teaching our kids. And I think this is something actually that a lot of moms, it's maybe not natural for them to do that. And I think the reason is because we have that mentality that if we're going to send them to school, someone else is going to teach them these things. And so we don't worry about having to be intentional about that in those preschool years. But as a homeschool parent, we can be intentional about that and find ways, like you said, to just teach them the simple things. If you're playing with blocks, count your blocks. How many blocks do you have? How many red blocks? How many blue blocks? How many green blocks? Put them together. How many blocks do you have? Now let's take away 3. Now, how many do you have? I mean, there just are so many ways that we can teach our kids. But I think it's shifting a little bit to where more moms are starting to do these things. But I think for a lot of moms, it just doesn't come naturally to them to find opportunities to teach their kids letters and numbers and counting and math and things like that. So I love the ideas that you gave because it really does give moms things to think about. And I think the more we do it, the more opportunities we find to help our kids learn math skills and learn communication skills and learn their alphabet and their sounds and, all of those fun things. So I remember when Brooklyn was really little, I don't remember Lacey having it, but it was like the farm, the like letters farm thing that was on our refrigerator. Do you remember that? And you would pop in the magnet letters. Yes. As little magnets, and you would push it and it would say, and even something as simple as that, and put it down at their level on the refrigerator and, they can learn sounds that way. I mean, there just are so many fun ways for them to learn. So.
And I think that if you're a first-time homeschool mom, really view these preschool years as sort of like your homeschool mom training wheel period. So you don't have to have it all figured out now and sort of be okay with maybe this feels not so natural to me quite yet. Yeah. If you came out of a traditional school background, well, then it's hard to think outside that box, right? It's hard to think about, oh, wait, learning doesn't have to be from a textbook, right? Learning can happen through life. But while that may be easier for someone like me who came from homeschooling, I'm like, throw out the box, don't put me in a box. Right. That's really hard for a new homeschool mom. Yeah. And so be gentle with yourself. I would just encourage any mom who's listening and use this as an opportunity to practice some of those mindset shifts here in the little years so that it will just get easier and more natural over time. So by the time you're doing, more formal homeschooling, it will already kind of be part of the way you think about learning.
Right. Absolutely. I want to talk about fine motor skills, but first we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Have you tried CTC Math yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, "I'm absolutely thrilled with CTC Math. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTC Math, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. Are you looking for a homeschool curriculum that goes beyond textbooks and truly engages your children in the joy of learning? Apologia's award-winning curriculum is written by homeschool parents to specifically meet your needs and captivate your students with hands-on activities and experiments that make learning unforgettable. With an easy-to-follow, open-and-go format, Apologia takes the stress out of planning and provides a simple roadmap that can easily be tailored to your family's needs. Explore live classes or self-paced courses designed to accommodate every student's unique learning style. Elevate your child's education, spark their curiosity, and nurture a lifelong love for learning with Apologia. Discover Apologia today at apologia.com. We are back with Amy. Let's talk about fine motor skills and how those play into these preschool years.
Yeah, it's so important, right? We have like our gross motor skills, like can your kid balance and run and climb? Really, really important for emotional and mental regulation, physical health as well. But with those fine motor skills, we're thinking we want children who can write and hopefully have somewhat legible handwriting. Yeah. I don't know that I've been totally successful with that with all of my children, but and so some of those things can come from actually writing. There are triangle-shaped large pencils, large crayons, things like that. This is going to be so child-specific. Mm-hmm. Some children are not physically ready to have the ability to grasp and write and draw. And if it's becoming a real problem or a hardship, don't force it. At the same time, you know this. You've been around the homeschool world for a while. People are very all or nothing, right?
Right.
So you'll see that some people are like, if you give your kid a pencil before they're, name a number, you're a terrible homeschool mom. Other people who are like, I can't believe you wouldn't give your 3-year-old a pencil, right?
Right.
I say, look at the child in front of you.
Yep.
And do what's best for them.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Amen.
So whether or not you're actually teaching them to actually write or not is child specific. But fine motor skills can be developed in so many other ways. Mm-hmm. You get the child safe scissors and just let them cut. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful, especially if you're homeschooling older kids. Yeah. I would let my little ones just have scrap paper, old magazines. I'd let them cut and rip. And then they would rip into smaller and smaller pieces. It was a big mess, but it kept them quiet. And it was secretly developing fine motor skills. You can do things like putting beads on a string. Mm-hmm. You can have tweezers and sort things. There are lots of ways to develop those fine motor skills that will help them with their handwriting later on, whether or not they're physically ready for the actual transcription.
Right. And there are a million ideas on Pinterest for those things. So if you just Pinterest fine motor skills, activities, preschool activities, you will come up with more resources and ideas than you could even imagine. But some of them are, you just can use so many things that are already in your home, and it makes it really easy so that you're not having to figure out, oh, what am I going to do? I have to go to the store. I have to buy all these things. It's fine to do that too, but it's probably not necessary. One of the things too that I remember doing when my girls were little was we would trade toys with other people sometimes, just different, remember those lacing cards, stuff like that. And you can trade toys with friends and, let your kids use them for a time until they get bored with them and then give them back to your friend. There just are lots and lots of options for teaching our kids fine motor skills. The scissors thing, oh, that's funny because how many kids have cut their hair? I just was talking to my friend the other day and she's like, so my daughter cut her hair, like her bangs pretty close to her head. And I was like, I said, I kind of feel like it's a rite of passage for every little girl to do that. And so maybe, here's an idea. My girls didn't do that when they were itty bitty, thankfully, but I've had lots of friends whose kids have, whose girls, it seems to be a girl thing because a boy, you can just buzz his hair and it's not that big of a deal. But, if you've got a girl with long, beautiful hair, she takes those scissors because she's learning how to use them. But maybe if you find a baby doll, like go to a thrift store and find an old baby doll and let your daughter cut the baby doll's hair so she can get that out of her system, see what it's like to cut someone else's hair and not her own, and then teach her this is what your hair might look like if you cut it yourself. And it's not going to look pretty, but you can cut your doll's hair. I mean, and at the same time, then they're learning those, fine motor skills, and you can make it fun, make it a fun way to do that. So let's talk about play, because I know in these early years, play is so important for them to just be active. And you talked about the gross motor skills and them learning, to climb and jump and to do all of those things. Let's talk about the importance of play in these years, because I think that's far more important than anything academic.
Oh, yes. And really, play is the work of a small child.
Yeah.
Or even not just a small child. It's very important. Yeah. And I would even say free play, going a step further. So not necessarily play that's directed by a parent or by an adult. Yeah. There's a place for that as well, of course, a formal game, things like that. But just the ability to come up with ideas on their own or in a group with their siblings or other children is so incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
They're learning problem solving, critical thinking, social skills, what to do if people disagree, these things. And of course, we know our little learners, they're going to have a little bit more trouble with some of that than others. They don't always know how to make wise decisions. So of course, understanding all of this is within the context of keeping them safe. And what's good for your family and your children, depending on where you live and all that. But it's so very important just for them to explore and play and have plenty of time for that. And so no matter what you're choosing to do for your, formal preschool, homeschool time, make sure that it is a small amount of time so that they have plenty of time to play and explore, to be bored, to help with chores, some of those things too. And that can be indoors, outdoors. I think a good combination of all of those things is so very valuable.
Yeah. You know what I used to do? I keep talking about when my girls were little, because they're not that age anymore. So I'm just, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking back to those years and things I haven't thought about for a long time. But one of the things that I used to do is we would go to Costco, and whether Costco or Sam's Club, how they have those big cardboard sheets that slide in between like toilet paper and paper towels and other big items. And you can take, and they're huge. I mean, I don't know how, they're maybe 4 feet by 4 feet, somewhere around there. They're quite large, and they'll let you take them for free. I mean, they just trash them. And so I would get a few of those when I would go to Costco, and I would roll them up, put them in my cart, walk out, and then I would come home and I would just lay those on the ground, and my girls could paint. They could do sidewalk chalk on them. They could use markers and draw. They could cut them up and make different. I think one time they made a puppet, they did a puppet show. And so we cut little windows in it, made a puppet show thing. I mean, there are so many fun things you can do with just those big sheets of free cardboard, and just being creative like that and allowing your kids to create stuff and play. But yeah, outdoor play too is so important, them getting that sunshine. We've actually done a couple of really good episodes. We did one with Abby Ranella not that long ago about the health benefits of homeschooling. We also did another one some time ago with Jenny Urich from 1000 Hours Outside. And she talked about the benefits of being in the outdoors, of course, which is why, 1000 hours outside. And scientifically, why that's so good for kids to be climbing and balancing, and how that, moves into their brain development, and it helps them to learn other things in the future. And I just was I had no idea that play was so important when I got into homeschooling. I just didn't know. We have this idea that we need to sit them down and put those worksheets in front of them. And I did that from the early years. I mean, when we started in pre-K, Brooklyn had her workbooks and she had her little pencil, and I expected her to fill in the blanks. And she was like, this is awful and boring, and I hate this. And so I didn't push it. And guess what? She knows how to read and write, and it's amazing. So she's made it all the way through high school. But yeah, that playtime is so important. Let's talk really quickly. We have just a few minutes left for this episode, but I want to talk about behavior, because I know, again, in these early years, behavior can be the one thing that really gets mom, because these kids are little and they oftentimes don't have any self-control. And I mean, in a lot of ways, maybe they're still being potty trained. Maybe they just don't know how to stop talking. They don't know how to stop moving. They don't know how to feed themselves without making a disaster everywhere. Or sometimes maybe they're just really active and they are the ones who are getting in trouble and bouncing on furniture and stuff like that. So behavior, I know, can be really overwhelming for parents, even if it's not bad behavior, but just very active behavior. Talk through that for a minute.
Yeah. And this is so difficult. And it is one of those areas, perhaps as moms who can look back with a little bit of nostalgia, perhaps to those little years, which is appropriate and good too, because it's a beautiful, good time. But we do have a little bit of distance. All my kids now can go to the bathroom on their own. And that is a big step up in parenting, let me tell you. So I think the first thing is I would just encourage these homeschooling moms that they're not alone just because your child is a late potty trainer or can't seem to sit still, or whatever it is your kid's little quirk is. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. That is the child that God has given you with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. And so you're going to have a long time, by God's grace. This is a long process. And they're going to still make a lot of mistakes. It's going to take a lot of time. But if you can be patient, going back to that idea we talked about on Monday with relationship, really pour into the relationship now and practice and practice and practice. It's just going to take time. Actually, one of the things we did as a family that I thought was helpful, because sometimes when all of the character training, all of the self-control training is always happening in the context of someone's in trouble and now there's consequences. When that's the only time that you're dealing with those issues, it can feel very negative. So we would do an obedience game, and we'd call all the little kids into the living room and we'd say, okay, mommy and daddy are going to say something. And when we tell you to do something, you're going to say, yes, ma'am, mommy. And they'd run do it. And it'd be like silly stuff like do 15 jumping jacks. Yes, ma'am, mommy. And they do the 15 jumping jacks. And so it's basically Simon Says, let's be real. But we called it, this is our obedience practice. This is how you respond when mommy tells you to do something or daddy tells you to do something. And that was actually kind of helpful sometimes if things were getting a little out of control. Rather than waiting until that moment when mom was going to blow her top, right? Let's stop. Let's intervene here. Let's turn this into a game. It actually can help get some of that physical activity out too. If a kid just needs to get some of that aggression out, okay, run up and down the stairs 3 times, do some jumping jacks. And it was good for mom too, for myself, to kind of, okay, let me take a breath. This is not an emergency. Let's practice. So that would just be a little practical tip that you can kind of work into your days. But a lot of it is just patience. It's relying on the grace of God. It's knowing that the Holy Spirit is the one who is at work in your child. It's remembering they really are very little. This was very hard for me to realize with my oldest, probably 2 children, actually. I think I expected a little bit more of them because you're just very excited and they're the oldest. And it can be easy to put pressure on them and also on yourself. That is maybe a burden that God has not given you to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. It's training them in righteousness. And, I learned this from Ginger Hubbard, who we've had on the podcast many times. She was just on a few weeks ago, actually. And training our kids in righteousness, not just disciplining them for doing wrong, because sometimes they might know that they're doing wrong, but they don't necessarily know the right way to do things. And so teaching them, like you said, role playing with our kids and teaching them how to do things the right way, how to respond the right way, they're like, their childhood, especially in these little years, is so much about learning. Like, how do you respond to an adult? If an adult comes to our home, or if we meet up with an adult out in public, you look at them and you say, hi, my name is, Susie, or whatever. Like, just teaching them these things and not expecting them to know how to act right, because kids don't just understand that and know that. They have a sinful nature. And so they don't always know how to do the right thing. So yes, we have to train them. And it really is, you talked again about relationship. And we've said this oftentimes, relationship over reading. And so especially in these little years, through all of their homeschooling, but really as they're learning to read, know that the relationship is more important than them reading. They will get there. They will learn how to read, but also character over curriculum. And we're going to talk about curriculum in tomorrow's episode, but developing that character in them over trying to get through the curriculum is so much more important. So these are important things. It takes a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of intention from us as parents. But again, we're their moms, we're their dads, and no one else is going to take our kids by the hand and train them in these things like we can.
And it's such a privilege as homeschoolers. I mean, you might think, oh, it would be easier to just send that little one who's wild and crazy, send them to preschool. I can focus on the other kids. But, and that may be what's best for a family for a season. But I think that homeschooling gives us so much time to have that discipleship, to nurture the self-control, not just, the number sense or whatever, to have the freedom, all that time to play, like we talked about earlier. So just to really realize what a gift homeschooling in these little years really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is a gift. Parenting is a gift. Children are a gift. And it is a privilege to be able to have them and to raise our kids. It's so much fun. So anyway, we are out of time again. This time goes so quickly, but we will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about curriculum for those who are wanting to know, like, what curriculum do I use? Do I use curriculum? We talked a little bit about that, I think, on Monday, but we'll get a little bit deeper into that tomorrow and some other things as well. So Amy, tell our audience one more time where they can find you.
You can find me at humilityanddoxology.com, Humility and Doxology, all the places online, and then the Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology podcast.
All right. We'll link those in the show notes. You guys, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned to the very end to hear what's coming up next on the podcast. And if you have not yet watched our movie, Schoolhouse Rocked, the Homeschool Revolution, if you're new to homeschooling and you're just wondering, like, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I'm not sure if I can do this. I don't even know what this is all about. There's all these misconceptions and negative stereotypes and all these questions that you have. Watch the film because it will answer all of those questions for you and it will bring so much encouragement to you. And you can stream it for free. Doesn't cost you anything. Just go to our website, schoolhouserocked.com, and you can find it there as well as everything else that we have. Have a great rest of your day and we will see you back here tomorrow. Bye.
Laughing in the face of imposter syndrome and coming to you from the epicenter of manly overconfidence, I'm your host, Garrett Hampton, and you are listening to The Thinking Dad.
Even if we're able to push the evildoers and the totalitarians back for another generation, maybe if we work really hard, maybe even 2 generations, if they've got the young people, it's over.
I often think about Daniel's parents, who you don't hear anything about. But they must have laid down the foundation for Daniel to be able to go into Babylon and not fall.
We're in that very beginning part of the cycle for tough times. We've been fat and happy. We've been enjoying we're lazy because we enjoy so much freedom. We got all these blessings, and why would you go do the hard work? And so for a long time now, decades, we haven't had to do the hard work. We've been living on the fumes of previous generations paying the price. And we got to raise the bar and say, I'm willing to give more of my life, that's my time, more of my money, of course, that's our fortune, and more of my sacred honor, which is my reputation. I'm willing to put it all on the line. Every single one of us has to be willing to do that.
Join us for the first season of The Thinking Dad at thinkingdad.net.
Yeah, so it's good to remember that as you lower your expectations, you increase your joy.
Yes.
So make sure that any rule you're going to set up for your kids, do you really want to have to enforce that rule? If it's really important to you, then be willing to have that be a priority.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to be a little bit more free. Let the children play. They can play with something quiet like wooden blocks or a train track. Build with the Duplos, color, play with the stuffed animals, move around, flip upside down on the sofa. Depending on the child, they may need a lot more physical stimulus. So maybe even one of those little bouncing balls, that little children can sit on or spin around on.
Yeah.
Those are some ways to keep their hands occupied.
Play-Doh.
So macking a sibling.
Amazing. Yes.
And their body, like that motion. Yeah. So that they're able to actually pay attention better.